After an emotional win in front of Broncos country, Denver returns to Empower Field still in the playoff chase and is aiming to keep their postseason hopes alive against the Bengals. We'll take a look at how Denver might keep the ground game rolling, how the Broncos will be keeping a close eye on a Bengals rookie in the passing game, and why this game could act as an elimination game when the playoff field is ultimately settled. Welcome in. Happy holidays, everybody, to Broncos Weekend. I am Matt Boyer alongside Alexis Perry and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater back in the gold jacket. Looking good, sir.
Yes, sir, Boyer. We get the dub. Let's get the gold.
There we go. All right, guys. When the schedule was first released back in May, a lot of Bronco fans had Detroit and Cincy automatically circled as surefire wins. Broncos take care of business against Detroit. Cincy, though, they come in with a 7-6 record, same as the Broncos, and a big reason for that is their quarterback, Joe Burrow. As we take a look at the quarterback matchup this week, Joe Burrow and Teddy Bridgewater. Alexis, Teddy was steady last week, 7 yards per passing attempt. But this offense, they've thrived off the running game since he has a top 5 run defense. So, how do you think we'll see Teddy maybe have to air it out this week?
I think he probably needs to air it out a little bit more than we've seen the past few weeks, but I don't really think that's what they're going to do because the Broncos are running the ball. They're committed to the ground game right now, which is what we've been pounding the table for all season. It really seems like the Broncos have found their offensive identity with the run game, and I don't think the Broncos will be reactionary to the Bengals defense and move away from being really a run-first team. I think they're going to fight fire with fire and use the run to set up the pass. Now, Teddy Bridgewater, of course, he does need to have a few explosive plays this week and connect when the opportunities present themselves, but I don't think there's going to be a point from now and the end of the season where Pat Shurmur goes into a game saying, Teddy Bridgewater, this is the week. We want to see him air it out. Now, of course, I'm going to ask Ryan O'Halloran kind of a similar question here later in the show and get his thoughts on this, but I think they're going to continue to run first, pass second, even against a formidable defense like the Bengals.
Bengals are formidable in the run. Against the pass, though, they are 29th in the league. Might be an opportunity.
We'll get to that.
Okay. Might be an opportunity for the Broncos. Steve, a guy who's not afraid of airing it out. Joe Burrow has been on fire this season in his second year. Burrow played a very strong fourth quarter against the Niners. When Burrow is at his best, what's he doing well? How do you think Vic Fangio wants to throw him off his game?
Well, Joe Burrow is a very good, young, up-and-coming quarterback. But there are some buts. He's leading the league in sacks, 41 sacks on the year. He's tied for second with 14 interceptions. He and Trevor Lawrence are tied in that category. But he's playing good football, and he's clutch. He's able to make clutch plays in clutch situations. He's a quarterback when, if he's able to just sit in the pocket and throw the ball, he's very accurate. Also, if you blitz him, he's also accurate. The problem is when you put pressure on him with 4. And that's one of the things that we're going to have to do, get pressure with 4, play some zone coverages, match up when they get in that zone, and I think we'll be able to keep these guys under control. But they have the ability to make some big plays. They got a lot of talent on that offensive side of the ball.
Sounds like Steve needs to get up.
Yeah, Steve, you want to get out there, rush for us, Steve. Rush for, put him on the end. All right. Burrow won't likely have his right tackle, Riley Reef. So that's some good news for this Broncos pass rush. But you just mentioned it. He likes to chuck it downfield, and a big weapon for Joe Burrow is Jamar Chase. As we look at some of the offensive weapons in this game, Jamar Chase and Melvin Gordon for the Broncos. AP last week was Melvin's second multi-TD game of the year and his second 100-yard rushing game on the ground. Which part of his game has propelled this rushing attack the most, you think?
Yeah, I mean, he earned the 4th highest rushing grade last week against the Lions, and I think we can really credit his success to his vision. We all know Melvin Gordon, he sees the field extremely well. He has always been that way, and he's always able to find holes that his own line creates for him. But I really think he's just kind of the whole package. He's an excellent receiver out of the backfield. He really understands protection. So these are the things that keep him on the field because there really isn't a situation that he can't play in. Like Coach Fangio said this week, he's a damn good player. And just add in the fact that he and Javonte Williams, they provide this 1-2 punch, and that keeps both guys fresh, and both guys are able to keep defenses off balance. So I just think from what we've seen from Melvin Gordon this year, he's just making such a strong case for himself to be back here with the Broncos next season. So interesting to see what he could do this week against a very good Cincinnati Bengals rush defense, but I think that he can have a big impact.
Well, Bengals coach Zach Taylor, Steve, knows about big impacts. He said this Broncos rushing attack, as balanced as they've seen this season, Speaking of balance, on the edges, Ja'Marr Chase. Probably the rookie of the year. Mac Jones might have something to say about that in New England, but how tough of a cover is Ja'Marr Chase going to be for the Broncos in thinking about all of Burrow's targets that he's going to have on Sunday?
Yeah, he's going to be very tough to cover. He's a receiver who's explosive. He's quick. He's got great hands. He and Joe Burrow, they have a connection from when they played at LSU together. But I think what makes this offense special is they have many weapons. They have a 1,000-yard rusher in Joe Mixon. Ja'Marr Chase has 1,000 yards receiving. Then they have T. Higgins, who has over about 800 yards receiving. And then they have Tyler Boyd, 600 yards receiving. The tight end, C.J. Uzomah, 400 yards. And then Joe Mixon, another 200 yards receiving out of the backfield. They have a lot of talent to go along with Ja'Marr Chase. I think that's what makes this team so dangerous, because any one of those guys can explode at any given point.
Chase is averaging over 17 yards a catch so far this season. So, yeah, the Broncos secondary is going to have their hands full. Speaking of that Broncos secondary, let's look at the Broncos defense and the Bengals defense. If you like defensive football, guys, this is a game to watch because two great units here. Let's look at Trey Hendrickson and Justin Simmons. AP, Burrow said that Denver secondary, top to bottom, is the deepest secondary they've seen all year. Simmons, obviously the guy for that group. So, how good does Denver secondary need to be if they're going to make a playoff push, starting here with Cincy?
I just think they need to be as good as they've been the past couple of weeks, which has been really, really good. And it's not just Justin Simmons, who, by the way, is the highest graded safety in the league since week 8, but it's Pat Surtain, it's Kareem Jackson. This week, it's going to be Bryce Callahan, because Joe Burrow loves looking deep downfield. He's thrown just as many touchdowns on explosive plays this year as he has on short passes. So obviously, he's a massive threat, but I think if the Broncos want to keep their playoff dreams alive this week, it's really the front seven that's going to need to have a bigger impact on the game. In Bengals wins this year, they've rushed for about 120 yards on average. In their losses, it's about 80 yards on average. So obviously Joe Mixon plays a huge role in their offensive game plan. So when teams have made the Bengals a little bit more one-dimensional, a more pass-heavy team, Cincinnati has struggled a bit. So I think if this offense can put up points and the defense can keep the Bengals' ground game in check, the secondary just needs to continue to do what they've been doing. And I think they'll find success this week.
Steve, on the other side, we actually talked about Trey Hendrickson last year when we previewed the Saints and the Broncos. Problem is, Kendall Hinton ended up being the quarterback that game, and there wasn't much pass rush in that game, but
there wasn't much pass at all.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very true. So Hendrickson, though, this year, 12.5 sacks. This defense as a whole tied for second in the league in sacks. So, what do you think Denver has to do to limit this Cincy pass rush? I mean, they are very, very capable.
Yeah, they're very capable. The defensive line and edge rushers together have 34 and a half of those 37 sacks. And like you said, they're second in the league. I think they're tied with the Steelers with 37 sacks. I think how you slow that down is establishing the run, like you said, AP, and then the play-action pass. If you don't use play-action pass with guys who rush the passer well, you're doing yourself a disservice, and I think Pat Shermer knows that, and I think we'll see a lot of that come Sunday.
And the bubble screen.
And the bubble screen. Play-action pass.
There we go. All right. I like that.
AP up there in the booth with the headset on. She's got it. She's got it down. We've got to take a quick break. When we come back on Broncos Weekend, the last time Denver made the playoffs, it was a win at home against the Bengals that helped springboard them into the postseason. We'll look at the shared history between these two teams and crunch some numbers about the playoffs. That's next. Since their first meeting in 1968, the Broncos and Bengals have met 32 times, with Denver holding a 22-10 advantage. The Broncos took 3 of the first 4 meetings in this head-to-head battle, including an early slugfest in the 1969 season. That day, quarterback Steve Tenzie threw a pair of touchdown passes, and Denver set a franchise record with 10 sacks in a single game, as the Broncos left Cincy with a 30-23 win. This matchup also gave Denver one of the most memorable and improbable plays in team history. With time running out, the Broncos came up with a miracle as Brandon Stokely took a deflected pass 87 yards down the sideline to beat the Bengals by a final score of 12-7. Despite plenty of close finishes, there has only been one game that required overtime. In 2015, Denver erased a 14-point deficit thanks to touchdowns by Emmanuel Sanders and C.J. Anderson. Following a Brandon McManus field goal in OT, Denver's defense walked off the field with a 20-17 win thanks to this DeMarcus Ware fumble recovery.
Shotgun snap, fumbled, down on the ball, and who has it? DeMarcus Ware has it! It's over in Denver!
And in their most recent meeting,
He's hit as he throws the ball, knocked free by Bradley Chubb. Chubb will get the strip sack, and he gets the fumble recovery, and they're in the end zone posing for a picture.
Bradley Chubb and Shelby Harris combined for 2.5 sacks and a forced fumble, while Justin Simmons snared an interception as Denver dominated Cincinnati by a final score of 24-10. A 10-sack performance, probably not likely this weekend, but if Bradley Chubb and Shelby Harris even get halfway there, well, the Broncos' playoff chances are going to be looking pretty good come Sunday night. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. Steve, these are not the Bengals of your era, okay? You were a perfect 4-0 against the Bengals in your career with one pick. They were very up and down as a franchise when you played, Steve. Now they're in a bit of a different spot. What do you remember about those teams back when you played the Bengals?
Yeah, well, I remember them going to a Super Bowl at one point, and just a lot of guys on their team. We were friends. I had some guys that lived in the same neighborhood back when I lived in Georgia. So because we didn't play each other that often, I remember the relationships more so than the games. But we had a couple of good battles back in the day.
Dalton Reisner said it this week, Steve. The Broncos have not answered the bell in the month of December these last couple years. Very different scenario now as we head into the last quarter of the season. And thinking about these last 4 games, Steve, Bengals, Raiders, Chargers, and then you've got the Chiefs. In thinking about those last 4 games, what record will Denver need to have to solidify a playoff spot in your mind?
Oh, man, it can get close, especially the part of the season that we're at, and having 3 division games right there is going to be tough. But I think we're going to need 10 wins. That means out of these last 4 games, when we take care of business here with Cincinnati, we got to beat either the Chargers, Raiders, or the Chiefs. And I'm hoping that by that last game, the Chiefs, they're already in, so that'll be a gimme here, and we knock off the Raiders and hopefully the Chargers too. But if not, we'll still be able to get in there.
Do you like that wrinkle to the schedule? Got to win in the division in order to make the postseason. Do you like that?
You know what? It puts a lot of pressure on the team, and sometimes teams need that to rise to the occasion. But everyone knows right now that, hey, right now we got to win every game. There's a big sense of urgency amongst everyone, and I'm anxious to see what this team can do when put in that situation.
According to the New York Times stats website, The Upshot, 10-7, Steve, gives Denver a 75% chance to make the playoffs. 2-2, it's going to be less than 10%. So 3-4, Steve.
Yeah.
Got to get to 3-4.
Got to get it.
Got to get to 3-4. We've got to take a quick break. When we come back on Broncos Weekend, Denver's wide receivers haven't found the end zone since week 9, but they have a winning record in that time. Will that need to change against the Bengals this week if they are going to win? Alexis is back with the Denver Post's Ryan O'Halloran next. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. With the Bengals bringing a tough defense to Denver this week, how much will Denver need to alter their offensive game plan? And which Broncos on defense will need to step up to stop the Bengals' bell cow rusher, Joe Mixon? Well, to get some of those answers, Alexis Perry is chatting with our friend Ryan O'Halloran from the Denver Post.
Thanks so much, Matt. Ryan, it is the biggest game of the season yet again here this Sunday as the Broncos and Bengals go head-to-head, both teams hoping to keep their playoff chances alive. Now, I know it seems like the Broncos have really found their identity with the run game over the past couple of weeks, but we all know Cincinnati's defense, they're stellar at stopping the run. So do you think the Broncos will continue with their identity and their game plan of running the ball, or will they change things up this week?
Yeah, it's tough to look at that Detroit game as not like a one-off because the Lions are so terrible and they just ran it 40 times. But I do think they have to mix it up, marry that run and pass to use a Vic Fangio-ism. And one thing is they haven't really used that play action a lot in the last couple of games. Last week they didn't have to, but Cortland Sutton, got to get him going. I would try and get him some touches early. But also the same for Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy. So if you can get Williams and Gordon in the run game, and then maybe take a shot on first down. They didn't, last week against Detroit, they just ran on first down because they were gaining yards. But it is important, I think, against a better team to have a little bit of a balance. And even if you do, that doesn't mean you're straying from your identity because you're doing it to win that game.
Well, Ryan, you just mentioned play action. Obviously, getting those receivers involved is important. But are we making too big of a deal over the fact that the Broncos just have one receiving touchdown in their last 7 games? Or is this kind of one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of situations?
Yeah, like Pat Shurmur will say that we are making a big deal out of it because he has to pick something like that every week. But I do think it is important because Jerry Jeudy hasn't had a touchdown since he returned. Same with Sutton and Patrick lately. One of these games down the stretch, you're going to have to throw the football with efficiency down the field. In the previous couple games, they haven't had to in those wins, but get Sutton downfield, maybe he draws a penalty. Just throw it up to him. In a 50-50 ball, he gets a 30-yard penalty.
Right.
But I do think they have to at least try and do some things to get into the red zone, and then maybe you can lean on your power in your run game once you get inside the 20.
Well, in terms of the Bengals offense, it seems like the Bengals have been able to find success whether Joe Burrow is throwing for 150 yards or over 400, and I think that's because of how much they rely on Joe Mixon, the running back. But the last couple of weeks, he was held under 60 yards, and of course the Chargers and Niners were able to get wins over Cincinnati. So how were those two teams able to do that, and what can the Broncos take from them this week?
Yeah, I think the Bengals, the last 2 games at home, they were in chase the game mode. They did not show up early against the Chargers. They fell way behind. They fell way behind the 49ers at halftime. That neutralized Mixon, and they had to throw a ton of passes. So if you're the Broncos, plan A is you want to run it, but maybe plan A should be, hey, can you take some shots, get a touchdown or 2 early on. And if you're leading 14-3, that really does take Joe Mixon out of it, because this is an offense that, he's an old school guy. He leads the league in carries. Their plan is the opposite of the Broncos, so 245 attempts. So if he gets going downhill, then that's a problem for the Broncos, because as Vic Fangio has pointed out this week, the run defense has been up and down, and they really do miss Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson at those 2 inside linebacker spots. So, if they're asking me, and they're not gonna, I'd say throw it early, get a lead, then lean on your run game.
Well, you mentioned Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell, 2 guys who are obviously missed, but Kenny Young has been playing well in that inside linebacker position. However, he is in concussion protocol this week, and things don't seem to be progressing as well as the Broncos would like. So if Kenny Young can't go this week, who's somebody that you want to see step up in that position and help contain Mixon?
Well, since we're not available to play, they have to go to another guy, Jonas Griffiths, who just got here about a month and a half ago. And he was on IR, so his development is unknown, but I think he would be the guy to start in the base package. But it's going to be interesting to see how much Jonas actually plays, because Cincinnati plays so much 3 receiver. That means a lot of Bryce Callahan in the slot. If you're Vic Fangio, maybe you go with keep your 3 linemen on the field to contain Mixon and go with that 1 inside linebacker. That could be an option, because there's just been so much attrition at that inside linebacker spot. If Griffith starts, he'd be the 7th inside linebacker to start a game this year.
Okay, well, we all know what a big game this is. 2 7-6 teams going at it, hoping to keep their playoff chances alive, like I mentioned earlier. So what would a win this Sunday say about this Broncos team and the direction they're heading late here in the season?
Well, I think against a team like the Bengals, it probably means they're playing their best football this season at the most opportune time. And if you're the Broncos, what you want to do is you want to get into those last 3 division games controlling your own fate. And if they do that, 8-6, going to LA, in 2 weeks, going to Las Vegas after Christmas. Las Vegas, you don't know what kind of state they're going to be in. And then with the Chargers, Vic Fangio's had a lot of success against Justin Herbert since he came in the league. So I think it's a gigantic game, but we said that last week. We said that the week before when they sort of laid an egg against Kansas City. But I think overall, if they beat the Bengals, it's just another win against a good team, and that would be Washington's a good team, Dallas, the Chargers, so you sort of start stacking up some of those quality wins.
Meaningful games in December. What more could you want, Ryan?
Well, it makes the weeks go faster, that's for sure, instead of writing about the draft, coaching searches, quarterback searches, so we're all for that.
Well, speaking of writing, be sure to follow him on Twitter at Ryan O'Halloran for all of his great content that is on thedenverpost.com, and of course, printed as well. Matt, let's send it back to you.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, Steve, if Denver gets a win on Sunday, they guarantee themselves a winning record at home for the 2nd time in 3 seasons, and more importantly, playoff hopes are still alive. So, how are they getting it done? Your keys?
2 things. First off, we got to get off to a fast start offensively. We got to put some points on the board. Cannot go into the half behind on the scoreboard. And number two, defensively, we have to come out with the attitude of we're going to stop these guys. We're going to make the tackles, get the turnovers, stop the run game, go into the attitude that you're not going to worry about what the offense does, because the offense, they may score 30 points, they may score 10 points. Don't worry about that. Go out, do your job. We'll come back with the dub.
Steve, for me, this game is going to be won through the air. Denver needs to get more INTs on the board. The Bengals are in the bottom third in the league, giving up INTs, so create some confusion for Burrow, stop him that way. And then on offense, Bengals are 29th in the league against the pass. We mentioned that in the first block. This is the day for Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick, Steve. They're getting into the end zone, I think. What do you think?
Down the field?
Down the field.
All right, I like it.
All right. Doesn't matter, though, Broncos country. A win is a win on Sunday, keeping those playoff hopes alive. That's going to do it for us on Broncos Weekend. Special thanks to the Hall of Famer, Steve Atwater. I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos country. We will see you next week.